Yes,
right?
go ahead now.
Well,
Go again.
good
Yeah.
afternoon to your many listeners. It's always a pleasure to be here on Point FM, and more importantly, to be part of We Are the Ones as we continue our struggle as one nation to be able to become more progressive and more prosperous in our efforts to build our society. And I'm indeed happy to be here this afternoon.
Before you get overly happy to be here this afternoon, you remember you used to teach me anything? Tall. Once upon a time, long time ago.
I used to teach you drama, and I used to teach you other things, but I wouldn't want to talk about that.
You taught her well. We can see how dramatic she is.
Along with Ambassador Liverpool in the studio, I am pleased and honored to have Dr. Ron Daniels, who is the convener of the USA National African American Reparations Commission. And he recently addressed the U.S. Congress on the reparations demand. Now, why is Dr. Daniels here? Because, ladies and gentlemen, you should know by now, we should all know by now, right? We should be automatic thing that August the 1st is what? Emancipation Day. And so, in Antigua, it is traditional that some of us, on behalf of all of us, partake in the watch night. Am I saying it right? That some of us, on behalf of all of us?
Yeah, some of us on behalf of all of us.
Okay. So, Ambassador, bring us up to speed for those who may not be familiar. What is the watch night gathering?
Well, the watch night gathering is an activity initiated by the Antigua and Barbuda Reparations Support Commission, which was established back in 2006, 2007. Don't quote me, but somewhere around that time. And our focus and mandate is really to bring awareness around the issues of reparations. And when we talk of reparations, we're really talking about reparatory justice for...
Jupiter, if you can hear me, I need you, please.
We're talking about reparatory justice for the genocide committed against First People of the region, and also for the inhuman atrocities meted out against Africans who were enslaved in chattel slavery. And therefore, we started and felt it was necessary for us to pay homage to our ancestors by ushering in Emancipation Day. Because, traditionally and historically, we recognize and accept that August 1st is Emancipation Day. And we felt that we needed not only to have activities and to recognize and to commemorate Emancipation Day, but it was important for us to usher it in. And therefore, we organized Watch Night, and our first series of Watch Night activities were held at Betty's Hope Estate, which traditionally and historically was one of the largest estates on the island. And therefore, we felt that this was holy grounds, an area where the spirits of our ancestors are, and therefore we felt it was important to pay homage in that space. And we did that for many years until 2 years ago we decided to go to the botanical gardens in a general area too that we think the spirits of our ancestors still exist, based on historical information about the 1736 revolt and what happened in that during that era. So we're now at the botanical gardens, and the whole idea is for us to come together as a nation in sober reflection as we usher in Emancipation Day. Hence, on the 31st of July every year for the last, I think, 13 or 14 years, we have been implementing and carrying out and engaging in watch night activity. And that's a night where we come together. We normally have what we refer to a theological reflection on the theme of emancipation. We tend to have cultural activities, be it calypso, pan playing, poetry, dance. In some instances, we've had the pouring of libation demonstrated. And we then also have we also have annually a feature speaker, and we have had many speakers over the last 14 years who would speak on a specific topic. And then we would also sing the Negro National Anthem as we get close to midnight, and we always have the Nyabingi drummers, you know, who would take us into ushering Emancipation Day, you know, after midnight. So that's the whole purpose of Watch Night, is really for us to enter into sober reflection as we begin to celebrate and commemorate Emancipation Day. And of course, on Emancipation Day, we have activities that unfold. So in a sense, that's what the Emancipation Watch Night concept, as always, is all about.
Why do we think it's important to still remember? And I ask that in the context
because we are what took place, what we live now, what we do now, is a result of what we came from.
Okay.
So it's not about forgetting; it's about recognizing what was, and to build, and to find ways of saying never again, but also to understand, as a result of that, what are the challenges we are having now, and how we can begin to resolve those challenges. So the concept of emancipation, it's not a reflection on a old activity that happened since 1834. It is really a celebration of who we are since emancipation, and how we have grown as a people and as a society, and the need for us to celebrate that, and the need for us to understand that we were not made in 1834, and we did not just arrive on this earth in 1834, is that we come from a long, powerful, creative lineage of people out of Africa, and the need for us to begin to celebrate that and to feel good about that. And therefore the commemoration of emancipation is about that. The commemoration of emancipation is celebrating the growth in our economy, it is celebrating our achievement in education and sports. You know, that's so in a sense we are really always, our emancipation is an ongoing process.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, fair enough.
Yeah.
Dr. Daniels, welcome to We're the Ones. I know you're not new to Antigua, but I still have to tell you welcome back.
Well, I'm glad to be here, and it's just parenthetically, I'm looking at Boukman's prayer, the prayer that Boukman prayed on Wakaima on August 14th, 1791, and it's just interesting. So this is a commentary on it by a brother named Raptor. He said, Boukman's prayer shows basic Haitian wisdom. We are what we stand for and what we fight for, what the ancestors fought for. Boukman's prayer not only outlines the sacred wisdom of Voodoo, that we are our actions. We are our actions, not our words. So it just seems to me it ties in, you know, and I'm not going to include that in my presentation tonight. I was thinking about it, and I decided not to in the interest of time. But I think the other thing is that I'm delighted to be here because we celebrate not so much because we just want to remember. Malcolm X said of all of our studies, history is most qualified to reward all research. And so when we look back, you know, I'm delighted to be here because of all of the African people who were ripped from the African continent and brought here. And the other reason it's important because when we were ripped from the continent, we were not slaves. We were enslaved. We come from a great heritage and history. We are the ones who gave life to all humankind and the initial basic civilizing influences. That's who we are. And so we remember that because something happened along the way. There was this enslavement problem. There was the Maiafa that took place. But we are what we stand for. And so there was always resistance, you know, the reference to the revolt that took place. And this group of African people, these Africans from Antigua and Barbuda, were the first to achieve emancipation. And that is to be celebrated. But as we fast forward to where we are now, all over the world, be it Africa, be it in the Caribbean, be it in Africans in America, we are still in a stage of underdevelopment. It is underdevelopment, which is a direct consequence of what happened. We are not what we should be or what we are going to become. And we will never become what we are to become unless we reflect back and then act on who we are. And so Watch Night was important because we had people here, you know, in this nation to become, who were watching and waiting. and they were watching and waiting, and they wanted to be emancipated. And that emancipation created a flawed freedom. It was not independence. In fact, there was a whole stage of another form of peonage, of ruthless exploitation and suffering. And yet people kept hoping and kept praying and kept acting and sabotaging and resisting until eventually the British yielded. But as they yielded, they created, again, as Kwame Nkrumah said, neocolonialism is the last stage of imperialism. And so we are still, with political leadership, we are doing the best we can, but as Professor Sir Hilary Beckles puts it, there was a mess created. We did not create the mess, but it is our obligation in the memory of our ancestors to clean up the mess. And so, to me, coming here is to just celebrate the people here in Antigua as Africans, and the fact that, you know, you are leading the way. Really, in this new global struggle for reparatory justice is being led by the Caribbean, and right here in Antigua, you have a commission which is leading the way. And I have to say that we commend Prime Minister Gadsden Brown for embracing this, because the decision on the part of the 15 prime ministers here in the Caribbean to demand from the former colonizers reparations for Native genocide, which is not something small. It shows who we are as a people. We could have said reparations for enslavement. He said first people. We recognize that because who we are, and that's the other thing why history becomes important. We are a just people. We are a people who believe in righteousness and justice. That's the core of who we are. And when we are that, then we really, we become impeccable in terms of accomplishments and achievements and also leadership. And so, you know, the leaders came together, they made that decision, but that decision reverberated throughout the African world, including the United States of America. Well, we heard about it, we were encouraged about it, and we've been taking care of business in the United States of America because our brothers and sisters in the Caribbean are taking care of business. That
sounds very significant because we are considered to be so small in terms of our population size. And it's commendable to know that the decision that we took at a CARICOM level resonated way beyond our shores.
It is, and that's my responsibility, you know, as a leader who's been on this path for many years. So when I come, I don't come, you know, to lecture or to bring some new knowledge necessarily, but it is to have, because what happens very often, the people sometimes underestimate themselves. Sometimes it takes someone from the outside to come and say, hey, do you realize what is happening? If you listened to the presidential debates last night, reparations is on the lips of presidential candidates. That would not have, 5 years ago, we would not have conceived that it would be on the lips of presidential candidates. There's a direct line between that decision that was made by courageous Africans here in the Caribbean, and that decision and the momentum that's being created here, because you know there's a Caribbean Commission, Reparations Commission. We have a National African American Reparations Commission. Why? Because we modeled it after the Caribbean Commission. There is a 10-point reparations program from the Caribbean Commission. If you go to our website, you see we have a 10-point reparations program.
Similar?
Right? It was modeled after our sisters and brothers in the Caribbean, right? And so we deal with similar kinds of issues. You know, the need for repatriation back to Africa, knowledge programs, health, education, economic development, communications. We went category by category, and we saw how they meshed, but we put it within the context of what our particular struggle is in the United States of America. So the good news is that And it is the good news. It is the jubilee. It is the sense that we have to know who we are. We have to know that history, and to know that the Caribbean is in the lead, and the people, the Africans in Antigua, are very much a leading force in that overall struggle.
I'm silent because you're just absorbing a lot of this. We always have these kind of conversations, but like you said, it's good when you get someone from the outside that comes in to give a different perspective, and it's also very good to hear that we are leading this charge.
Well, I mean, I understand why you may feel a sense of awe in hearing that, because for me that's the point I was trying to make when I say that our emancipation is an ongoing process.
Mm-hmm.
and we have a lot to celebrate, as a small island state, as a region, that we have a lot to celebrate, but we spend so much time pulling ourselves down. It's like crab in the barrel.
But isn't that a part of our legacy?
None comes out because they're all pulling each other down, and that's one of the things we have to fight against. Slavery is part of our legacy. Mm-hmm. We want to continue it.
No, I'm talking about the pull down, because
that's what I'm saying.
This is almost like part of our DNA. So how do we cut it and toss it out?
This is all part of the conversation. This is all part of the emancipation celebration. This is all part of the reflection that these activities are not just about having a good time and just having a romantic reflection on the old days. This is about looking at who we are, where we are, and what are the things we need to do to get to that vision where we see ourselves going. And that's what this whole process is all about. And in doing that, we are also making a case for reparatory justice. And that's an important way of putting it, because there was, again, one of the negatives is like, well, okay, them white people need to pay our back. And well, how much for me check to be? How much are they going to pay me back? And we are saying, listen, for us, reparations is a development issue.
I hear you on the development issue.
It's not a pay me back issue. It's when we say pay back, it's not a cash pay back. It's a developmental issue. How can we begin to build our educational system, to improve our health services, our health practices? How can we have a better appreciation for our environment? How can we promote and build on our performing arts?
But aren't we doing those things every day now without
and we are saying,
the reparations that we anticipate?
And hear this, you're not only doing it every day, and we have done well.
Mm-hmm.
Now, can you imagine if we got the requisite support that we deserve as a result of the exploitation that took place, where we would be?
So let's pick an area.
You with me?
I'm following you completely.
Can you imagine if our governments in the region didn't have to worry about how they're going to pay external debt on a monthly basis? How much more thinking could go into our societies?
Okay. Agreed.
You understand?
Now, let me intervene there just for a moment, because one of the other things I'm going to talk about, there's certain commonalities and similarities.
Right.
So here in Antigua, but elsewhere, not only there was emancipation, if you will, but for all of the labor, and this is the thing we have to really, really understand, and of course you understand, our audience understands, but we have to really drive this home, and our young people should study this. And Walter Rodney's book, How Europe Underdeveloped Africa, is the classic, is the most understandable piece. But Sir Eric Williams also did it with Capitalism and Slavery. The wealth of the industrial world, the Western industrial world, was built off of the free labor of the brutal extraction of free labor from our ancestors. Mm-hmm. And having extracted the labor, they did not even have the decency to turn around and say, we will leave an endowment to you. So what the British government did was turn around and compensate the slave masters for their property, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
Now suppose those same dollars had gone to the formerly enslaved Africans so they could begin to build and repair the damages that have been done. In the United States of America, we never got the 40 acres and a mule. but their former slave masters were compensated. And the United States of America would not be what it is today but for the centuries of extraction of free labor. And there's this one presidential candidate, and she's speaking with great authority. She's white. We're glad that she's speaking out because she's like just educating people on this. She's just showing what white supremacy, how it functions, and how it has underdeveloped some and developed others in a way that's beginning to challenge the sensibilities of some. Now, there's some weak white people because of privileges who will never be changed. There are some who will be changed because that education will say, I did not know this, because they've been miseducated. Most white people have no clue in the United States of America because they've never been taught any real history. And indeed, we ourselves don't often know that history. That's why Bob Marley says we must know our history. He says none but ourselves. I mean, that emancipation has got to be the emancipation of our minds. Because if we don't emancipate our minds, we will never, ever build the quality of life that we're capable of, because we have been de-Africanized. It has been beaten out of us, not completely. So when we see all the dances, what is that? And the whole world is emulating what we do, from hip hop to whatever. Everything we do gets emulated and often stolen and appropriated.
I was going to come to that because for me, the question I'd like to put to both of you is that, yes, so we know hundreds of years ago there was the enslavement, there was the mental reconditioning as much as it could be. There was the expropriation of the wealth, all right, and then the process of freedom began, because as we say, it's an ongoing emancipative process, and so we were given the physical, you are free, but none of the economic or education trappings and so on to go along. And over time, we've been getting bits and pieces, and we have been grabbing bits and pieces, and we now say that we want reparative justice. And a lot of times we are told, even among ourselves, that so who do we give this to so that this process can continue? And by that I mean, for example, if we look from a Caribbean perspective, Ambassador mentioned the whole issue of strengthening our education system, strengthening our health system, and so on and so forth. Is it that we then can get the resources and we determine our path forward? Well, we continue to determine our path forward, or is it that there is an expectation that more of us will go to where these other institutions are and benefit there? And if you understand where I'm coming from, is there room for a mixture?
It's a process.
I don't know.
It's a process. It's not a magical, miraculous manna falling from heaven that we're heading for. That's not where it's at. Mm-hmm. It's a process, and it can be a long process. It's a marathon.
Can be.
Yeah. Slavery was 300 years, and I think Africans were resisting that from the first day of that 300 years, but they never stopped. So we have to condition ourselves that human development is not a sprint.
Right.
It's a marathon, and we have started that, and we are progressing. In the process of developing ourselves, we're just asking for justice. That's all we're doing.
In the process of asking for justice.
And that justice may come in different forms at different times. It's no one, here is your reparation, and let's move on. No. So, for example, I think Sir Hilary Beckles is going to be signing a special agreement with the University of Glasgow.
Yes, I saw that.
Along with the University of the West Indies. That's a baby step.
It was signed today.
It was signed this morning, I think, at 10 o'clock.
That's a baby step.
I think I saw that.
Yeah, that's a baby step. Antigua and Barbuda is opening the 4th campus of the University of the West Indies in Antigua and Barbuda to serve not only Antigua but the rest of the OECS. That's major achievement. It's another step.
Remember our days at UWI?
Exactly.
It's a small step, but it's a big step.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's a big step because one of the greatest, we deal with and Fagnon talks about this, right? Mm-hmm. The whole phenomenon of internalized oppression, where you are with the colonizer and you internalize the colonizers or the oppressors or the enslavers' view of yourself. And so that that emancipation process has to take place. So in the United States of America, for example, 25 years ago, 40, 50 years ago, we've always had a reparations movement. The biggest impediment to some degree has been our own inability to believe that it was possible.
Mm-hmm.
And so we had the struggle, the struggle for reparations is as much a struggle for our own minds as anything else. So let's say we never achieved anything. We never got one piece of anything. If in fact we freed our minds to understand that that struggle is a righteous struggle, that is a victory, because we will have healed to some degree and have been made whole. So now, because of the struggle that's taking place, there was a poll cited, I think yesterday or the day before, 73% now of Africans in America, African Americans now believe that reparations is possible. Well, that's why you have, but that's how things move. And so like when King says in his last speech, I've seen the promised land, I may not get there with you, but my people will get there. That is all. That is that. It is a long distance struggle. But those victories, those small victories, are really huge victories, because today, when Professor Hilary Beckles has been talking about this and this step was taken, people say, well, what's going to happen? Well, it's happening. And in the United States of America, last night, one of the presidential candidates got up and said, when I'm elected president, I will sign Sheila Jackson Lee's bill on reparations. Well, that's H.R. 40, which is a bill which would create a commission not to study whether reparations are warranted to African Americans, but in what form it will take, right? So that would be like, I mean, who would have imagined? I mean, as much as I talk about imagination, my puny brain could not have imagined that would have been the conversation just 5 years ago. Mm-hmm. It is exploding. And so we have to, it's a tide that we have to ride and build on. And so what we've done with the National African American Reparations Committee, we have conceived of the concept of a reparations finance authority, which would gather up various, whether it's land, whether it's scholarships, whatever those things, whatever those reparatory justice provisions are. Mm-hmm. And then there would be an allocation of them, not so much in terms of individuals. In fact, we don't really talk about individuals at all. But it is the notion, as the ambassador is saying, of development. So how do we take those hospitals that were closed in black communities and reopen them? Mm-hmm. How do we support historically black colleges and universities that are clawing and scraping and so forth? And maybe because there's a reparatory justice movement and we re-educate some of our athletes and artists and entertainers who already have billions of dollars, they will decide that they should reinvest in ourselves. Yes. So it's tough. It's a difficult process. It's hard, and it's hard because very often we are in our own way. But when you understand the diagnosis of why we are in our own way, then I don't get discouraged, because I know the prescription. I know we've analyzed what the difficulty is, and therefore we have to treat it. And so in a place like Antigua, we would hope that the curriculum of the history would be infused so that we don't have to do special programming hither and thither, that it's infused throughout so that our young people are learning and growing on that knowledge. Not knowledge for knowledge's sake, but knowledge that has them be fortified to understand that the people who were the very first to achieve emancipation are still on this track. Mm-hmm. And because of that, this place is going to be one of the crown jewels of the new African world that is being built.
How do we have a conversation like this? And I'm going back, I know I'm stepping back, because we are, and Ambassador mentioned it earlier, our mindset is to not take ourselves forward mentally. And there's so much there for us to move forward with. How do you think that we can, do we just continue to just butt until we break through the wall? Do we press that way? Or as part of this process, do we need to do more to re-educate our mental status of our citizenry so that they are more open to the things that need to happen?
I think it's a combination of both. We need to be determined, and we need to say that we will never give up. That's what our ancestors did for 300 years. They never gave up, and even though the emancipation handed to them was a piecemeal freedom, and we are still in that process of emancipating ourselves, it's clear just from history and the experience that going forward that we have to persevere, and we have to keep pushing for that, and it's just an ongoing process. But in doing that, we certainly have to, as Dr. Daniel say, find ways of educating, find ways of inspiring, find ways of encouraging, and the number of things we can begin to do is like changing our narrative about ourselves, and see ourselves as positive achievers, see ourselves as great and major contributors to the world. So when we begin to look at music, and we begin to look at this little space of just about 6 million English-speaking people, and we have impacted the world in reggae music through Bob Marley and the Mighty Sparrow and Arrow, we need to feel good about that. We need to feel good about and this little space of islands dominated cricket for 20 years. We need to feel good about that, and we need to feel good about ourselves, and begin to recognize that we have a lot more to celebrate in the Caribbean than to pull down. So even the concept of pulling down one another and having this negative thing and constantly just being critical of ourselves, just changing that narrative. Of course we have to be critical, of course we have to. So there's a saying, we can say the cup is half empty, and we can say the cup is half full. And I'm just saying, if we begin to take the half full approach in the way in which we deal with ourselves, that will go a long way in inspiring us and give us that strength and courage to constantly forge ahead, to improve our development, and to get that kind of justice, and to begin to operate in this global environment that is extremely complex and is getting more and more complex day by day. And therefore, for us to deal with that, we have to be united, because we're small.
We are.
You understand? So we don't have the luxury of fighting Guyana and Jamaica and Trinidad. We don't have the luxury of fighting ourselves in Antigua and Barbuda, because our enemy is not among us. We are not the ones that making our economic difficulties. It's outside those pressures constantly come from. You see? And so this whole emancipation period gives us an opportunity to have these conversations, and we hope that by having the conversation we can begin to see
broaden
that,
the base.
broaden the base. And as Dr. Daniel made the point about curricula too, that we have to become even more targeted.
Yes.
We have to become even more targeted, because we're not going to live forever. So the generation that's coming, they must be equipped to continue and carry the baton.
Yeah, CXC really needs to address that history syllabus. I think that is something that urgently, we spend too much time on Columbus. And those facets.
Yeah, and see, that's a part of it. You see what I'm saying? Because see, we have an internal battle and we have an external battle. And so, while I agree generally that it is the external forces, but internally, because of the internalized oppression, we say in the United States, we have a difficulty because some of us believe the white man's ice is always colder. So now, if you're trying to build a business, you're trying to build something, and people believe that the European the colonialist ice is always colder, then we function. There's certain things that come from that. We don't treat each other a certain way because we have a low opinion of ourselves, and so we don't function with the level of excellence that we are due because we built the pyramids.
One of the key things that we talk about sometimes is the economic underpinnings of development of our communities, of our societies, and so on. Dr. Daniels, I have an interesting one for you. Tourism. Tourism represents the lifeblood for many of our small island countries, and we are dominated by, in Antigua in particular, tourists from Canada and North America. North America, which includes Canada. But we don't get, the minority of those tourists, visitors, are our skin color. I often ponder, is it that we're not viewed by our our kind as being good for vacationing? Is it that they don't take a lot of vacation? Because we know stories, Ambassador, you'd appreciate it, where we know that a lot of people who come in on, for example, the cruise ships, they would have put their last pennies together to come to experience the Caribbean. But they're less of our people. You understand where I'm coming from.
Sure.
So when we talk about this whole issue of coming together, and I know reparations is key, but as part of the process, how much of it relies or depends on us to be able to support each other, not just in the island, but across the island, the African American, the African, and so on.
Well, clearly.
Can you hear?
No, there's something.
Yeah.
Something.
And I'm trying to. Oh boy. Okay.
It's
1 second.
It's quieter now a little bit.
Let me see something.
Right.
I'm trying to find some music. So you got my point?
Oh no, I understand your point, but I thought you were going to make another point.
I was going to, and the drilling took it from me.
Yeah,
I'm so
but,
sorry.
But so let me quickly address two questions. One, yes, it's the many people don't have necessarily the income to do cruises and vacations and so forth. I'm blessed to travel with my wife. We travel all the time, and I'm a poor professor, so to speak. But one of the things I do for my mental health, we call it, is to do travel. And we think the best place to do that is in the Caribbean, God's gift to humanity. And so I'm wearing my Antigua and Barbuda hat today that I got here several years ago. But if you come to my house, you'll see a hat for like maybe 21, every island and place we've been. We have a whole section of nothing but hats. Because that's our preferred destination. We went to Europe a few years ago, and that was nice and so forth, but we prefer to come here. So I think it's the matter. In fact, the cruise lines, because they're always seeking to expand, are actually beginning to market more vigorously among the African American community because they want to expand their business. So it's more a question of having the resources to actually do that. But there's another question that I thought you was going to raise, because the other question is, why is it that we don't do and take advantage of, and certainly Dr. Julius Garvey, we were at the dedication of the University of the Reparations Resource Center at the University of the West Indies, and he was ran Jamaica, so he could say this. He said, why is it that if we have all of these resources to ourselves, that we are so dependent on tourism in the first place? And because what happens is, in the tourism, we have, I think someone described this, we have land so rich that if you just think, this stuff just grows. And yet we are importing food to support the tourism industry and so forth and so on, which we should deal with. And the other thing that you run into, by the way, you talk about the mental process. So when we come up with the local product, we are conditioned to believe that the colonizer's ice is always cold, right? So you have the local beer, if it just doesn't taste as good, you have the local, no, it's just is not as good. You see what I'm saying? So that's another part of the battle we have to fight, right? We have to believe, first of all, we should produce quality products. We have to produce quality. You're not obligated to buy from me an inferior product. I'm going to produce because I believe in you and you believe in me. I have an obligation to produce an excellent product. When I buy that excellent product, you then should have an obligation to purchase it and by the way, even if it's not, maybe it's 90%, then given what we're dealing with, give me the benefit of the doubt, all right? But see, so all of that is there. Now, some of that is also about leadership. It is about how we envision doing things, and saying to ourselves, as Garvey did, we can do this. We can make these interconnections among ourselves, right? And that those connections have to be made with Africa. Africa is the richest, as Du Bois said, the richest continent on the face of the earth. And God is looking down on the African people of the world. Now he knows, he understands, and she understands, he and she understands that we've been through the mire, so he and she will cut us a little bit of slack. But they keep saying, well, wait a minute, if I gave you this, why then should any African anywhere be suffering? So he, she, God is waiting for us to emancipate our minds so we will have the ability.
But we didn't. But we didn't get to keep it. I mean, Africa has been cut up. It's been parceled out to so many of
Got
our colonial
Got
masters.
that.
And we're still fighting just to...
Amakal Cabral said, we must also learn to struggle against our own weaknesses, right? Now, the fact that these things happen is true, but it does not account for the fact that we have leaders on the African continent who are stashing away in Swiss banks, not $1 million or $2 million, but billions of dollars that should be utilized. So that is also a part of the process. So as we educate, we cannot just say that we removed the removed the European colonizer so that we would have people taking the same positions. And so Dr. Betty Shabazz once said, Malcolm X's beautiful wife and partner, that we may be oppressed, but we do not have to cooperate with our oppressors. And so we cannot overlook that aspect of it, because if we overlook that aspect, it allows us to simply continue to do as we're doing without understanding we also have to demand of ourselves. We have to demand the best of ourselves. And so when we look at the African continent, and now moves are being made. I mean, the ambassador who is most recently here, there's something called the Afro Champions now. They're beginning to say, how do we take these private resources, connected with the private resources here in the Caribbean, the private resources in Black America, and begin to turn those resources on, because we shouldn't be dependent on China. We should not be dependent on China. The only reason we're dependent upon China is because we don't have the audacity to make the linkages that we ought to make.
But who is responsible for making those linkages? I think, and that has been one of the things that's been curious from my end, because we say, okay, we don't want to be dependent on China. I don't think any of us want to be dependent on China. But China is right there, right in that breach that needs to be filled, and offering. So if we are to reach over, for example, to the Africans, who is responsible for that first outstretched hand? Is it for us to reach out to the Africans, to reach out to our father to come to the children and say, listen, we see your need, let us work together?
It doesn't really matter. At one level, it takes leadership. The problem is that we have leadership in this phase of our evolution, of the struggle. We have too few of our leaders who have that vision. And those leaders, and we're hoping, and that's why the young people coming along must pick up that vision. So when they're going to school, they're getting that technical school, that managerial skills, all those skills, they must say, we are doing this so that the resources which are developed here in Antigua and Barbuda and Jamaica and so forth, that we're going to manage those resources. And we're going to manage them in a way that will be efficient and effective. And we're going to reach out to our sisters and brothers in Africa. And young people are coming along saying the same thing. Because one of the problems that we have is, again, there is no excuse, really. If you're looking at a nation like Nigeria, for example, great country, they tout this and that and so forth and so on, and it's all beautiful, really. But we have situations where people are sending school supplies to build schools in Nigeria. I know African Americans who are sending school supplies and so forth to Ghana. Come on, what? I mean, hello, that's a contradiction.
So you're saying that we should send the money and get the resources from inside Ghana?
I mean, Ghana has
right.
enough. Ghana has a reason Ghana should be embarrassed. That's an embarrassment. There's enough wealth in Ghana to organize itself properly to do that. That's a leadership question. So therefore, even as we produce new leaders, we have to reproduce the Julius K. Nyeres of the world, Ahmed Sekatouris of the world, who must be looking back now saying, oh my God.
Yes, but every time we do that, then there's always that person or group of persons up there who see the risk of having those kinds of people around, and they orchestrate and organize to have them removed.
Yeah, but that's the nature of the struggle. I mean, frankly, but if we are so therefore, what we need is not a particular leader. We need a collectivity of leaders.
Mm-hmm.
If we're all
on the same page,
they can't take us all out, right? So we have to have the audacity. We have to have the courage. We have to have the vision to move, in that direction. So what I'm saying here, and these are uncomfortable kinds of conversations, and these are the conversations.
And these are important conversations.
Well, these are the kind of things that, as someone who's been as a Pan-Africanist for many years, and who can look in the eye of some of these folks who were who we supported in South Africa and other places, we know them. We know what they were about. You know what I mean? And so we can ask the question, for example, in South Africa, it's emancipation is in South Africa too. There is black leadership in South Africa today. And yet, far too many people who are in Soweto and in the townships still live in abject poverty, while some of the leaders who were in the forefront of it are living very well, right? And so they're being challenged now, and they should be challenged. And we ought to have we have to have that internal self-criticism, and sometimes we shy away from that. Give me one quick example. Because otherwise blackness becomes like some superfluous, meaningless. Because it's not about the skin color, it's about the ethics, it's about the morals, it's about the values. So we had a situation in Philadelphia at one point. There was an organization called MOVE. There was a black mayor, his name was Wilson Good. And before that, you had a mayor named Rizzo. Rizzo was a vicious white supremacist mayor, and he would, police shootings and police brutality and everything. We were just against Rizzo. Woof, 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 woof. Well, in the MOVE, there was some issues in this community about MOVE. There was some suggestion that maybe they were not doing things in a certain way, right? And it was Wilson Good who ordered that the MOVE compound essentially be bombed. And it was bombed.
Okay.
And several people were killed. And people were paralyzed to say anything because it was a black person who did it. Well, my ethics from ancient commit says no. Wilson
if it's
Good,
wrong, it's wrong.
It's wrong, right? And that's a part of recovering ourselves too, is we have to be able to challenge ourselves to be the best of ourselves in terms of moral and ethical leadership. And in that regard, to me is a part of the reparatory justice process as well, because unless we do that, all of the things that we've just talked about, so we produce a product, somebody risks, and you go out and you produce, a wonderful product. You produce Petra something or other, right? And people, and it's good. But people won't buy it because it's local. Right?
Yeah,
we got to get past that. So and also when it comes down to a variety of other kinds of concerns, we have to produce excellence, and we will, by the way. I'm not discouraged by this, but if we don't talk about it, if we don't deal with these uncomfortable conversations, we will never ever get to the promised land.
And in terms of the promised land, I'm going to go to Ambassador, because one of the mixed review things that we have going on for us in the region is the very institution that came up with that 10-point reparations plan, where CARICOM, we just had CARICOM Day recently, and the 4th of July. I always find it interesting. The 4th of July is CARICOM Day. The 4th of July is also American Independence Day. I find it very curious. Doctor spoke about the whole issue of leadership and that we need to have consensus as leadership and at that level. Do you see us, while we strive to have the reparations coming through at the CARICOM level, do you think that we are doing sufficient at that level, at the leadership, as a leadership, to move our region in the direction that we need to go?
I think the fact that our leaders agreed in the first instance.
No, I'm talking about beyond the reparations. I know. I'm looking at, for example, issues of health care, issues of regional transportation, issues. I'm looking at those issues, those cross-cutting issues across the region that can transition us to the next level as we go through this emancipation process. And for us, we're using, OECS on one level and the CARICOM on the other level to be the leadership that drives our process. That is where I'm now pitching my query. If you think that we are, because there are many who would contend that we go in circles. Our circle does not expand in terms of our CARICOM in particular boundaries. So we make decisions, and a few years later, we come back to revisit those decisions that we made because we have not done sufficient to move them to the next level.
Yeah, I mean, it's a process that is. We have a number of challenges as we move forward, and I think we are making progress. Some may say, well, that progress is slow, but it's progress nonetheless. But there are challenges, and part of the challenge that we have has to do with what we refer to as an implementation deficit, where our heads have very good ideas and vision for where they see our respective countries can go. It's like the national level. We have a budget speech, there's some great ideas, but we have challenges along the way, and they're wide and varied. Some of them we know very well. Like we're in the hurricane season now. We don't know what could happen. We could get a storm, and it will set us back. Yeah?
It will set us back.
Yes, there could be a major financial disaster in Europe. It will set us back. What? You see, because we are so vulnerable as small island states, it becomes a constant challenge in our developmental thrust. And it's not about making excuses. It's just reality. But some people don't know realities because they're not sitting in the seat of government. And when you get into that seat, then it hits you.
Different story.
It's a whole different story. But we're too small now to be missing those stories. We need to understand those stories and to say, how can we, government, civil society, how can we begin to improve on the implementation on the things that can help us? And how can we, as government and society, and as citizens in society, work? Because at the end of the day, all of us are going to benefit. You see, and that is the conversation that we need to have, even at the national level, to say, listen, what are the things in Antigua and Barbuda that we're not going to play politics with? Let's put it on the national table.
That would be nothing.
What are the things? And these are the conversations we need to have. When we're going to put these on the table, I mean, I remember I think it was George Lamin who spoke about that at one of our lectures, and I think it was 2009, I can't recall what year, who spoke about, let us as small societies put some issues on the national table and come to consensus on those issues and say, you see, these issues, we are not going to fool around with this. This is an Antiguan national issue, and all of us are going to put our heads together and we are going to work this out.
You know, we to my mind, we're kind of sort of getting some issues.
That's where I'm headed. I'm saying, but we are getting there. But we need to have these conversations and civil. And you see, as citizens, we also have responsibilities.
Absolutely.
You see, and that's an important thing. We have responsibilities, and we need to begin to stand up and take those responsibilities. But we don't necessarily need to do it in an adversarial way. We don't necessarily have to do it in a crab in a barrel mentality way that we're pulling down. We don't have to do it in a negative way. That's all I'm saying, is that we need to take responsibility as citizens. And hear this, there's no easy way out. There's no magic wand for the social problems and economic problems that we have. It never existed. No president or prime minister or great economists have the answers. Society and development and people's growth and the growth of a country is a dynamic stuff. There's no magic wand. If there were magic wands, then you'd have all these Ethiopian.
It'd be done.
You'd have all these great countries.
In utopia.
Utopia. I'm sorry. Countries around the world.
And one of the things, that's important about this is your audience listens, and this is true in the United States as well. We have taken to making these things a spectator sport. Frederick Douglass said that power concedes nothing without a demand and never has it and never will. That applies to black people too. When I'm looking at this in New York, I'm looking at a wave of political leaders, some of whom are my friends, who were the militants years ago. They're now in. And they do good things. I'm not saying they don't do good. They do some good things. But they also want to be the ones doing the good things.
Yeah, you want to hold on to what you got.
You want to hold on. And so what's happening is, when you look at AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, she comes from my district. And the guy that she dislodged, not a bad guy. He was a liberal. but they had gotten to the point where they picked this one and they picked that one and they picked this. And guess what was happening? They were catering to only a small sector of the population, really not encouraging them to get involved. So most of the people in the district did not vote. And so now what has happened, however, is and that's a part of what was going on in the Democratic debate last night, by the way. I won't get into all the details of that. But what these young people have done, they've been sitting on the sidelines. Now all of a sudden they've injected themselves into the process. And that's providing new vitality. So the point is that participation is democracy.
Mm-hmm.
Participation, being engaged. You who are listening out there and, well, we elected this one, we elected that one, you go do it. No, it's not they go do it. We must do it, right?
Everybody must play their part.
And for me, what that means is if there are two political parties, that may be fine. But we also need a third force. That third force is not this party or that party. It is putting the interests of the country first. And it is putting pressure on all the parties to come up with those consensus items.
Remember, he can't leave the country. He's not allowed to leave the country.
But I'm just saying, I'm talking about the theory of it. I mean, I'm talking about...
Oh, okay.
No, it's theory. Okay. It's theory. But I'm saying, as we lay forward that theory, that's what has to happen. People have to come off the sidelines and they have to get involved because it's natural, almost, that if you're in, you want to stay in. And there's nothing wrong with that. And it doesn't mean that you're not doing good work. It doesn't mean that you're not doing positive things for that matter. But it becomes important that, that we have people get involved in the process. People have to get involved in the process.
So, my question then, as we look to wrap up, and by the way, this has been a very interesting
discussion. Well, I was
discussion.
just about to ask you.
I was going to wrap up, I was going to wrap up.
I was going to tell you I was supposed to be here for half an hour.
And I told you that wasn't going to happen. I did tell you that. I did tell you. Did I not say that? Yes. So, as we look to wrap into tonight, and Ambassador, I'm going to challenge you. I'm going to challenge you that we've had quite a number of these programs year in, year out, and we've had very good speakers. We've had discussions like these, and I think it is time for us to get them out there. Get them from ABS. We have the benefit of social media, lovely, and let's begin to put the dialogue out there, because discussions like these, they'll always jog someone else to jog the mind, so that we can then continue to not. Well, in Antigua, so we have this thing we call 9 days. We talk about it for 9 days, and then we go back to normal, and we wait for the next 9 days for the next session. So we need to break that 9-day cycle. Yeah. And on that note, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to just remind you very briefly that this evening, it's beginning at 9 o'clock at the Botanical Gardens. They've brought it closer to us. Yes. I'll be honest, I only went one time at Betty's Hope. It's just too far in the night.
We're thankful for the one time that you came.
And so we will have the watch night gathering under the auspices of the Antigua and Barbuda Reparations Support I always forget the S, Support Commission. Yeah. We begin sharply at 9, and we have a number of items, including the theological reflection by Reverend Jackson. We'll have some remarks from the minister. He made some very interesting remarks last year. I pulled them up because I had them, so I'm going to mark him tonight. He knows I'm doing this all the while. It's okay. And then, of course, we have our featured speaker who shared so eloquently with us this afternoon, as expected, naturally. So I'm looking forward to how you would bring it all together this evening. We have the chair of the commission, Mr. Omad, who will also bring remarks. And then we have a number of cultural performances in between. I see we have Guadeloupe here.
Yes, we have a group from Guadeloupe that's here, and hopefully we are going to... One of the things that we're doing for the first time this evening, too, is that we will be presenting the Flame of Africa Award to a number of persons who have been working with us consistently over the last 10 years or more. So I don't want to call names, and I forget, but I think there are 3. The Nyabengi drummers, for sure, they have been working with us consistently, so they'll be given an award tonight. And two other individuals. My memory is like fading me because so many things are going through my head now. But we'll be given 3 awards.
That's excellent.
And it's important to note too that the Antigua and Barbuda Reparations Supports Commission, it's a body that it's instituted by government. and we are given authority through the government to carry out our work, and hence our participation in the Regional Reparations Support Board.
Right.
So we also want to express our continued appreciation to the Prime Minister and his cabinet for, giving us the necessary support to continue this important work. It's also important to note too that we are part of the Carnival calendar of events, and we work very closely with the Festival Commission in pulling off these activities.
There's a all the event tomorrow as well, I think.
Yes, and all the events. So we also want to
You'll be doing
express
a
our
lecture there.
appreciation to the minister for national festivals for the support that we get, and also to make the point too that the Foreign Minister of Antigua and Barbuda, Honorable Chet Green, too, was very instrumental in making that strong linkage between the work of the Festival Commission
and the Reparations
and
Commission.
Emancipation Day activities in particular as well too. So we just wanted to
and also
to
the
make those
fusion with the national heroes
and
as
to
well.
and to also say that the Green Bay Moravian Church for the last 7 or 8 years, maybe even 10 years, they too have an Emancipation service breakfast at 5:45 every Emancipation Day, and we want to encourage, the congregation of the Green Bay Moravian Church and other persons in Antigua.
Every year, I'm telling you, every year I go in, and I remember when it's done.
Attend. I know it's a tough one to be at the watch night and leave the watch night at 1 o'clock in the morning and then get to Green Bay for 5:45, but it's a sacrifice, that people should make and do that.
Well, I have a certain
So we
person
want
I'm
to
supposed to be
encourage
exposing to everything, so we'll do it
persons
this
to
time.
come to the Emancipation service, which is
At
organized
5:45?
by the Green Bay Moravian congregation at 5:45 at the Green Bay.
And it's
Moravian Church.
is it normally a full house?
We normally have a fairly full house.
Okay then, well,
Yes.
I won't
So
be missed.
we will miss you tomorrow.
Good to
A lot
see
of
you.
people know you, so you should make an effort to come along. So I just want to encourage persons to make an effort to come to the Green Bay Moravian Church tomorrow morning and participate in a Emancipation service. And there's always a nice local breakfast that is served after.
Well, on that note, I want to thank you both for joining me in studios today. I always enjoy having discussions such as this. Ambassador Nosey and I will be back again in this shortly, and we have summer camp just now, our children to look after. And I want to encourage as many of us as possible. I know we have a number of activities out this evening. Let me take this opportunity to wish Miss Shanisha Francis, all the best in JC's this evening as she brings that crown home to Antigua. And I think there are a number of other activities, but I'm encouraging as many of us as we can that we really need to make some time to reflect on yesterday, remember our martyrs and our revolutionaries, reflect on what this notion of emancipation that began back then. And Antigua, we went straight to emancipation, and we should continue to embrace that leadership role, as the doc said earlier, and continue. That's a more appropriate term. Continue to press forward with the developments of our nation, our blackness. I'm saying it, our blackness as a people, to continue to keep grasp of those institutions and structures in Antigua and Barbuda that make us as a people, that we can move on and to do it on a regional level, at OECS level, as a CARICOM level, as we interact with our African American brothers and sisters, and of course as we reach out to the motherlands. And on that note, I want to thank you both for coming, and as we go to a break, this is We Are the Ones. You can't put KFC right after this now. Oh, can't talk something so serious. I'm kidding.
Seems like everyone is complaining these days. It's cold outside. My team lost. The in-laws are in town. My car broke down. No online warranty. No online service. No parts. No one to call.
Hold up. Your car broke down? I don't have that problem. I got a brand new car from Hadid Motors. Hassle-free, easy financing, and 5 years warranty. They have parts, a state-of-the-art service center, and certified technicians. Who's this calling? Hello? Okay, great, thanks. That was my service reminder. Who has your back?
Need to purchase a dependable vehicle? It's important to know a dealership you can trust. History is no mystery. Call Hadid Motors today at 481-2500 or visit us on Old Pan Road.
By the way, would you like a ride?
Yes, please. I'm late for work.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, I regretfully will have to cut our program short this afternoon. We're not going to do our full 2 hours because the studio is actually undergoing some improvements and the technicians are here now, and if we don't take advantage of them now, we're not sure when we'll be able to get them back. And so unfortunately we will have to forego our pan session, which we were just about to start this afternoon. But I look forward to seeing all of you at Panorama, on Saturday. And for those of you who are interested, I've been posting the songs and so on my Spectator page. I'll see if I get Jupiter to just do a connection maybe and have Point FM and pick up a few so that you will see where they are and the tunes that they're playing. And I did some pan crawl, which I was going to send for you. So, but ladies and gentlemen, this is it until Carnival ends. So for those of you who are in Antigua, do have a safe and enjoyable season. For those of you who are watching via Facebook, I know Jupiter has been carrying quite a number of the events. Yes, through Point FM, and he will be there tonight as well. So he will be carrying the Caribbean Queen event, and I will give him some footage of the watch night so that we can be, all together. And on that note, ladies and gentlemen, we are signing out from We're the Ones. Have a safe and productive and happy Carnival and happy Emancipation Day, and let us all continue to move together as a people of Antigua and Barbuda and the region. This is We're the Ones, over and out.